Hey guys, Sarah here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing this makeup look and just having a little girl chat with you guys. So if you are interested in that, keep watching, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe before you leave so you don't miss any of my future videos. All right, let's get into it. I asked you guys on Instagram to send in questions and topics. Today we are chatting all about the postponement of our wedding. So that is today's topic. If you want input on other videos that I do, you can follow me on Instagram. It's just at Sarah Brithinee. It's always linked below, but that will kind of give you the inside scoop on when I'm doing videos like this. So let's go back in time and start my makeup. All right, I need to get some of this hair out of my face so that I can start. I am going to link every product that I mention or that I put on below, but I might not mention every single thing. I am using the Good Molecules Daily Brightening Serum. I am going to do my skincare on here, which normally I don't. Normally I prime and moisturize and everything before I start, but why not? Today we will do it for you guys. So I asked you on Instagram, I told you guys that we officially postponed our wedding, and I left a little question box giving you guys an opportunity to ask me questions or give me topics that you wanted me to talk about in this video. So that is what we're gonna do. Next, I'm going in with the Derma-E Vitamin C Concentrated Serum. So a lot of the questions were kind of about two different topics. And one was like, how did we decide? And then the other topic was how our vendors were. So I guess I'm just gonna read through some of the questions and answer those and just kind of give you guys some insight if you are a 2020 bride and you're trying to figure out if you should postpone or not. I hear ya. It was so hard for us to decide. So I guess first of all, I should tell you our wedding date was September 6th of 2020, and we decided to postpone maybe 2 weeks ago, and now we officially have everything moved over to a new date. So we were September, which I feel like a lot of the couples that I have heard about have kind of been waiting until the last minute to see if they have to postpone, and then if they do have to, then obviously they will postpone. But I don't know. I did so much research. There's a photographer that I work with on a pretty regular basis now. She did our engagement photos, and now I just shoot regular content photos with her every month. And so I've talked to her quite a few times because I've never met the photographers that we booked for the wedding. And so I felt like she was a vendor that I could reach out to and ask just questions. And most of her clients hadn't postponed yet for September. I don't think any of them had. So it was just like really, really hard to figure out, should we postpone? Should we not? What will the regulations be when September rolls around? You know, is it going to be possible for us to have the wedding? And then I think one of the biggest like deciding factors for us was we reached out to all of our venues, or all of our vendors rather. That was like the advice that a couple of people had said. Reach out to your vendors, read your contracts, and see what people even say about it. So, because when we booked these vendors, we got engaged in February, booked most of them almost right away, and then obviously this all started in March. So we had everything booked already. So we wanted, most of the contracts weren't thinking that anything like this would happen. So we wanted to make sure we read through the contracts of what we signed, see what they say about, you know, postponing or canceling or anything like that. And then we reached out to all of our vendors to see what the situation was, what our options were. And right away, our vendor sent us the dates that they had for 2021. And there was nothing until mid-July, which our venue is like an outdoor-indoor venue, and they don't have AC and they don't have heat. So their wedding season is basically from like mid-May through the end of September, because obviously I'm in Michigan, and so you only have a certain amount of like warmer weather months, and they didn't have anything until mid-July. All right, let me keep doing makeup, otherwise I'm gonna be way too distracted. This shade is slightly light for me right now because I was doing yard work all week last weekend, and I got more sun than I thought I would because I was wearing sunscreen all weekend on my face. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so they didn't have anything until mid-July, which we didn't want our guests to be sweating through the entire wedding. There's a couple of weddings that I've been to that I've either been really, really hot or really, really cold, and it almost like makes or breaks your experience at the wedding. So I did not want to do that to our guests. Mid-July in Michigan is humid, it's hot, and no AC is just not an ideal situation. So we realized quickly that our date options for our venue were slim pickings already for next year. And we're not, I mean, we're only in May, so we weren't even taking into consideration people who are getting engaged right now and who's gonna get engaged over the next couple of months, and them, you know, trying to book their vendors as well. When we got engaged in February of this year, the only thing they had for this year that was like a weekend date was the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, which is the date that we chose. So we were September 6th. And so they didn't have a lot of options already. And so then we started realizing if we did want to postpone, with all of these people who are also getting engaged, plus all the postponements from this year, all of the vendors were going to be booked up. And so to get all of our vendors who we already had booked on a date that would work for them next year was going to be really, really hard to begin with. So that was certainly part of our decision making. That is probably one of the factors that drove us to postpone, I guess, sooner than maybe we would have if we felt like we would have had more options if we had waited. And then the other thing for us, which I don't, maybe this is the case for a lot of other couples as well, but I have a sister, she lives in New York. Obviously I want her and her wife and her 2 sons to be at my wedding. Adam has a sister that lives in Philly, a sister that lives in Minnesota, and then Adam's best man lives in Tennessee, and one of my best friends from childhood lives in Texas. And then like the majority of my friends, I have very few friends that live in Michigan. The vast majority of my friends live out of state. And so the thought of none of those of the closest people to us being there was just kind of not an option. Even if we were going to have, you know, a 40-person wedding or a 30-person wedding, all of those people who live out of state would be there. So it kind of just wasn't, that was a huge deciding factor, that we really want our friends and family, our close friends and family, to be able to be there and be comfortable being there. Another big factor for me was I didn't want everyone to feel like they needed to be wearing a mask at my wedding. I didn't want this whole thing to be like an overarching theme of our wedding. I don't want to look back and think, oh yeah, everyone had to wear masks at our wedding, and like all these people in photos, you can't even see their face or if they're smiling because they're all wearing masks, or they're not comfortable dancing or eating or drinking or whatever. I wanted it, no matter how big or small the day would be, I want everyone to be comfortable and happy and ready to celebrate. So that was kind of like one of the really big reasons why we ended up deciding. All right, let me look at what you guys submitted. Yeah, so what was the final deciding factor for officially postponing? I think it really was just our wanting to make sure that the people closest to us would be able to be there, and that we wouldn't have to wait. The fact that we wanted availability next year because, you know, I'm 33, Adam is 36. We didn't want to wait forever. We want to be able to move on with our lives and start our married life together. So yeah, we didn't want to end up having to wait until like 2022. So the combination of our friends and family, making sure that they could be there and be comfortable, and then also the venues availability. All right, somebody asked, we moved ours from March to October. Are you considering downsizing the guest count? So when I tell you guys that the majority of my friends live out of state, I am not kidding you. Like almost every single one of my good friends lives out of state. And then some of my closest family members live out of state. So many of my cousins live out of state. So when I was looking at the guest count, I have no idea how many of them will be able to come in the first place. And then we really didn't invite that many people. Like I think our guest count was at like, I think we invited 120 maybe. And gosh, I couldn't even tell you. I think at least 30 or so of them live out of state. So I don't know how many of those people were planning on coming or would be able to come, but there's a lot of people that don't live here. So we weren't having a big wedding to begin with, I guess is the moral of that story. So we didn't really consider downsizing it just because it really was only like close friends and family to begin with. So no, we haven't really considered that, although I do think that we are going to do a legal ceremony on our original date this year with just our parents and our siblings. So many questions about vendors. Were all of your vendors understanding and easy to move to a new date? Working with vendors, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Were your vendors understanding? Did any give you a hard time? What order did you reach out to your vendors when you decided to postpone? So somebody asked, are you worried you'll have to postpone again? As a spring 2021 bride, I'm worried I'll have to. So we're not getting married until almost a year after our original date. So we're not until, you know, later of 2021. So gosh, I hope we don't have to postpone. And since we are doing a legal wedding, I don't even want to put this out into the atmosphere, but if we had to postpone the celebration next year, I don't know if we would do one, like truly, because at that point we will have been married for almost a year. And yeah, it just seems like maybe we just aren't supposed to have a party if we can't have one at that point. So no, I am not concerned that we will have to postpone again, because it is far into 2021, and I'm hopeful for all of the early 2021 brides that they will not have to postpone at all. Okay, let's talk about vendors. So the order that we reached out to people was, we reached out to everyone right away because we wanted to know our options and, you know, what availability they had, all of that. But when it came to actually deciding on a new date, we went from our venue first, just because you can't really replace your, I mean, you can replace your venue, but when we looked at venues, we couldn't even really find a place that we wanted to look at, let alone find another one, and one that had availability and get out of our contract with our current one. So we went based on our venue's availability and then kind of trickled down the list of everyone else. So going through the list of our vendors, our venue was fantastic. They were absolutely amazing about it. They let us choose a date for next year and then also continue to hold our date for this year. So we were locked in with a date for both this year and next year, which was awesome. And then let's see, our food, we booked our food kind of in the middle of all of this, and so we had already talked to them about what would happen, because we wanted to do a tasting with a caterer, but obviously that was not possible, and so we decided to just book food through a restaurant that does catering that we've eaten at a bunch of times, and so we already knew the food and didn't feel like we had to do a tasting before booking it. And we had already talked to them, and they said, you know, if we wanted to change it or anything, we could, and to just let them know. So that was really easy. We just canceled it for now, and we might change the food that we're gonna do, because maybe we'll be able to do a tasting with a caterer, and if that's the case, we might go that route. But so food we just canceled and we will reevaluate, but they were amazing. Our videographer, they were good. I think the one thing is that they wanted us to pay our entire contract in full a month before our original date this year. So we would be completely paid in full for a service that would be more than a year away, which we weren't super comfortable with. And so we talked to them about it and we came up with an agreement for that, but they had no issues with changing our date, completely understood. They were fine. Our photographers, not great. We originally reached out to them and they said that people who were, we reached out like super early, and then we reached out again to all of our vendors just to originally see our options and then to actually talk about postponing. And our photographers, they originally said that anyone who is getting married this year or who wanted to postpone from this year had to postpone in the same month next year. Like they couldn't choose unless they wanted a Friday or a Sunday, but they couldn't have a Saturday of a different month later in the year because they wanted to be able to book for, you know, next year's clients, which from a business standpoint, I understand, but I also, you can only do what you can do with the vendors and the venue and everyone's available dates and all of that. So that was a little worrisome going in to talk to them actually about postponing. And then when we talked to them about postponing, they wanted to charge us an arbitrary fee to just change our date, like pay extra for a date next year, which we looked at our contract and our contract said that we could change our date. And then I looked at their pricing for next year and their pricing is the same as it is this year. So they wanted to just charge us a fee. I don't know, just to charge a fee. And so I reached out and talked to them about what our contract said. And then they said, sure, but it would only be one of them, which we hired a husband and wife team. And we really wanted to have photos of both of us separately getting ready. And so one of the biggest factors of hiring them in the first place was because they were a husband-wife team. And so they told us that only one of them would be there. And so we again cited the contract and like the contract says both of them will be there. So it just was not working out. And eventually I just asked them to let us out of the contract. So we paid $100 and we got out of the contract with our photographers. That one was really difficult because I 1000% understand owning a business, a small business, during this. It is not easy. It has been so hard on everyone and I am fully understanding of that. And I think that all of us just need to give each other grace and, you know, do the best that we can do. But I don't think that charging people fees for just a random fee is right to do to a couple who already doesn't want to postpone their wedding. Like it just feels like we were being punished for something that was out of our control. So that was a little bit frustrating. And then when I, you know, had said to them, I totally understand where you're coming from with your small business, they got really defensive. And then it felt like it would just be really awkward to deal with them. And photos and video are my biggest things for the wedding day, like out of all the vendors, just because that's what you can take with you. That's what you have after the fact, obviously besides your marriage, but like as far as physical things after the wedding, those are kind of your memories. And so I don't want to feel awkward with my photographer. I want them to, you know, have a really good relationship with us and want to get the best footage of our wedding for us. So yeah, paying to get out of that contract was the best idea for us. So we need to find a new photographer for next year. And then we're also going to do a photographer this year just for a short period of time to get some family photos, just some photos of us and all of that. So they were the worst vendor to deal with, and I get how hard this is. I think that's the part that's hard for me, is like I, from a business owner, totally understand where they're at, and like losing a year of income is terrible, especially because they are a husband-wife team, so they obviously, that's like their double income comes from their company. So that was not great. And then I'm trying to think of other vendors we had. Our DJ switched everything, no problem. Same DJ, same contract, same price, just moved the date. They were great. Every other vendor we had was just amazing. So yeah, everything just kind of switched seamlessly, and then we just canceled the food and then paid to get out of the contract with the photographer. So everything else is good to go for next year. We just need to decide on what we're gonna do for food. And there are people, once this started, obviously we had booked our main vendors, but we didn't have like everything booked. So we didn't have a dessert booked, we didn't have a florist booked, we didn't have a lot of things, and we kind of put planning on hold because we didn't know what to do and we didn't want to get too financially invested in it if it was going to change. And we knew we would have that many more vendors to deal with, and trying to find a date that all of them work with would be really hard. So there's still some vendors that we just haven't even started to look for. So we need to do that for next year too. So I guess my thoughts on the vendor situation is I don't think that it's right for couples. Like if you are going to postpone, I do think that you to a point need to be really cognizant of the fact that all of these vendors have lost an entire year of income. And so if you're thinking about postponing your wedding, waiting until the very last second to do it, I understand, but if you can't get a date until like 2022, most vendors raise their prices a certain percentage every year. So if you're then booking from 2020 and then you're going all the way into 2022, and they're probably still gonna honor that price, they're gonna lose out on a bunch of money because of that. So I think just being cognizant of both parties and what happens with all of them, like I just think that everyone in every situation needs to be aware and understanding. I think both of us went into deciding to postpone as this is not our fault, and this also isn't our vendor's fault. This is an outside source that none of us have control over. So we all need to work together to find the solution. And I am thankful that the majority of our vendors have been wonderful. Like we really lucked out. As far as what order to reach out to your vendors in, I think it totally depends on you. Like I said, our venues only open through certain months of the year, so they don't have as much availability as some other venues do. So that was kind of our top priority. I think things like food and DJ probably are things that they're going to be a little bit more flexible. They might have other people that work with them, like other DJs that maybe it's not the exact DJ, but it's the same company, or they might let you out of your contract and then you could just find another one. But I think your main vendors, whatever is the most important to you is what you should go down the list for. It's going to be really hard if you have, 10 vendors that you have to reschedule with, trying to find a date for the same day next year, just because the 2021 wedding season is going to be crazy with all the people who have had to postpone, and then obviously all of the people who would already get married. So I think just knowing what you value the most and contacting those vendors first would be my advice. And then as far as deciding whether or not to postpone, my biggest piece of advice for you is it's deciding, I guess, what you want. For us, Adam and I already live together, so when we get married, nothing's really gonna change. The only thing that eventually will change is we'll start a family. So for us, postponing made the most sense, but I can understand for people who don't live together yet, who getting married will actually change a lot of their relationship, wanting to just get married this year anyway and have a totally tiny wedding. I think that's amazing. I think you have to factor in what the most important things to you are. So for us, it was having a lot of our out-of-state close friends and family in, and then also just being able to, I don't know, celebrate with people and have a date that wasn't 2 years away after our original date. So those were kind of our main factors. I think you have to figure out if you don't live together yet, or if you were planning on like moving to a different state or city to be with that person, or if there's things that would make more sense for you to get married this year anyway. I can understand wanting to hold out and see, and if you aren't able to have the big wedding, just completely closing it in and having a super small wedding this year and calling it a day, that would make sense. All right, the last question I'm going to answer is, now that you have postponed, are you concerned that everything will open up and you would have been able to have the wedding? So when we first started talking about postponing and changing things, and we signed the first contract to change something, I was really concerned about that. And we had a lot of conversations about it, like what would happen if September rolls around and everything was just normal and we would be able to have our wedding. That was obviously a concern at first, but then we went right back to the original reasons of why we decided to postpone in the first place. And those reasons haven't changed. We still don't know if our friends and family across the country are going to be comfortable getting on an airplane. And we still don't know if, you know, all of our parents are in their 60s and 70s, and, you know, we still, none of those factors change. Even if legally we could do it, none of the reasons why we wanted to change would change. So no, we do not feel like if it's legal to do it, that we would have done it. We're still, I think we made the right decision. I'm gonna let my first coat of mascara dry and go in with Incognito. And then I'm going in with the shade Sugar. Alright, this is the finished makeup look. I guess the moral of this whole story is, if you are a 2020 bride, I hear you, we're in this together. There are no right or wrong answers of how to deal with this. The decision is really hard, and it's straight up just devastating to have to cancel, or not cancel, but postpone your wedding for a year when you thought you were getting married this year. The entire situation is just not a fun one to be in. If you have other questions or want advice, I will help the best I can. Leave me a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm just at Sarah Brithinee. Yeah, I wish there were more clear-cut answers. I am somebody who craves information and answers. So just having so many unknowns in this situation it's a really hard thing to deal with. So if you are the same way as I am, I'm sure that this is just driving you crazy, and I get it. It was a really hard decision to navigate. So just know that you are not alone in this. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe before you leave so you don't miss any of my future videos. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.